Hi, and welcome back to another episode of 80K Talks podcast. I'm Jane, along with my co-host and brother Steve. Say hi, Steve.
Hello.
And we bring you the best of the Adirondacks, whether it's a place to stay, eat, shop, or something to experience. We are your guide to discovering the amazing New York State 6 million acre Adirondack Park. Today's guest is Brian Burns from Northwood Cabins in Tupper Lake. I think this is only the second time we've had a place to stay, an inn, a hotel or motel on the pod. I think our first was Silver Bay Conference Center and Retreat on Lake George, which is an amazing place. I encourage you, listener, to go back and listen to that episode. But it's really in a very different category than Northwood Cabins. And since places to stay are some of the most popular content on our website, 80ktaste.com, we know our listeners should find today's episode intriguing. So without much further ado, welcome to 80K Talks, Brian.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Listener, if you've spent any time at all driving around the Adirondacks, you've probably noticed the abundance of motels and cabin courts that still exist as going concerns in the Adirondacks. This is a very popular place for people to drive to from New York City or Boston or Philadelphia or even closer in, like Albany
Or Montreal.
And the motel, what I call a motor court or cabin court, which is a sort of a cluster of small cabins, was a very popular venue for people to stay. And Northwood Cabins in Tupper Lake is a renovated version of that. Brian, do I have that right? Or how would you describe Northwood Cabins?
Renovated, maybe a bit of a stretch. Preserved would be a better way to describe it.
Okay, yeah.
When my wife and I kind of dove into this, we discussed how we wanted to move forward. There are similar properties near us that actually were purchased about the same time. And we kind of all went in a little bit different direction. We decided that we wanted to leave it as untouched as possible. Our priorities were safety, comfort, and aesthetics. We needed to make the cabins safe. There were a number of issues going into it that needed to be addressed immediately, within like days of us pulling up, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
Things that we did not anticipate, but that's all right. You roll with it. The Adirondacks is fertile ground for rocks. We grow great rocks in the Adirondacks, and they like they like to heave through the soil and the blacktop. And half of our driveway was just absolutely unusable. So that was the first project. But after safety, we wanted comfort. We wanted to provide our guests with some modern amenities. Well, we opened. We had 11 tube 19-inch, 20-inch tube TVs we had to dispose of.
Oh my gosh!
That sat on little metal carts. So going into it, we thought we needed to do something almost immediately to say, hey, new owners, we're going to try to bring this up to date. So all new, flat screen TVs. We brought refrigerators in. We felt that guests wanted the ability to put some drinks or their leftovers from dinner in a place that could, preserve them. So when we bought the motel, each cabin had exactly 2 lights, a bed, a dresser, and a TV. And we felt that needed to be addressed. So comfort was the next, and then third was aesthetics. And that was a plan that we decided to take it one cabin at a time. Some places will buy a property and shut it down and just go through it. We didn't want to do that. We wanted to stay open. We wanted to keep the business alive. So we did a kind of an initial, just kind of over the first year or two, just repainting, cleaning things up, getting it spruced up. And then over time, we've gone in and done some renovation. We've had to replace floors that had failed, bathrooms that just had not been updated in 80 years. And we have done that slowly over the last 9 years. And we brought the cabins back to what these cabins are what we saw in our mind's eye when we walked in 9 years ago.
Did you think it would take you 8 years to get there?
Actually, we're about a year or so ahead. We really figured it was 9 cabins in the house, and we wanted to do about one a year. And the way it fell, getting materials sometimes was easier than other times. And when we jumped in, and all of a sudden, we were about a year and a half to 2 years ahead. So we're very comfortable with that.
Brian, I just want to give our listeners just a little visual of Northwood Cabins. Obviously, you should go and visit the website. It's northwoodcabinsadk.com. But just to give a verbal description, it's adorable. They're this collection right on Route 3 as you enter into the town of Tupper Lake. They're the just adorable little white cabins with green trim, with cheerful red chairs on the porches. And I think I said in my review on 80ktaste.com, it looks like some place where Ricky and Lucy would have stayed back in the day. And with Fred and Ethel maybe in the cabin next door as well. I mean, it's just, I think you've done a beautiful job sort of reviving that classic Americana, roadside cabin court that was so prevalent during the 30s and the 40s. But I just want to make sure that people sort of, in their mind's eye, have a picture of that, because I think that's just a huge part of your identity.
It is. I appreciate that you chose Ricky and Lucy as opposed to Bonnie and Clyde, because or James Cagney and White Heat is always what I think of. I see those, but very film noir. Well, thank you. That's an accurate description. The other thing that we would say, or what catches everyone's eye, is our neon sign.
Yes.
Yes.
We went to a marketing conference sponsored by Roost, which is an amazing organization for the tourist businesses here in the North Country. They're so supportive. And they said that we had to have a purple cow. And that was the marketing for and these other businesses were kind of struggling in this work session. And when we said who we were, the whole room was like, "Oh, you already have one." You don't need to think of one. You have your purple cow right out front. Our neon sign is absolutely beautiful. It was designed by the son of the original owner to kind of commemorate or celebrate the business reopening after World War II.
Wow.
He designed it and fabricated it himself, and we have a picture of the original owner in his Sunday best suit, standing in front of that sign. So proud of it.
It's really beautiful. I think I was in Dartbrook Rusted Goods, the great home shop in Keene, and they had a book and your son was on the cover of it. It was a book about, I think, Adirondack signs.
Yes.
And I love it. And Steve actually always remarks about the number of vintage signs that are in the Adirondacks that are just call to be saved. And I think you guys have done a beautiful job on the restoration of that sign. It's incredible.
That was a task my wife took on. That was her goal our first year. We got there, and the excitement of the first couple of days, we went and threw the switch to see our sign. And of course, it didn't light. It was dead. It was absolutely dead. And but that's okay. Don't worry. The previous owner had left us a contact number, so we start calling. No answer. So my wife eventually Googles it. The poor man had passed away a number of years ago. So it's not a business that's is in every town. Neon fabrication is a dying art.
Yeah.
Found a man in Utica, Howie Cullen, and Just Neon of Utica.
Oh, nice.
He's an artist.
Yeah.
He's an artist. He partnered with Utica Sign and Graphic. Those guys are amazing. And they came up and looked at the sign. He made a service call from Utica and delivered the bad news that the sign was in such bad shape. We could try to preserve it, but when we took it off the pole, it fell apart.
Oh, wow.
Years of rust and road salt. It was duct taped and then painted over the duct tape. So it had the appearance of structure. So the sign you see today is an exact an exact replica of the original
Okay.
sign, down to every detail, because the APA required that of us. We are a grandfathered business. We are allowed to have the sign, but it could not move its location, its shape, its size, its configuration. So the only, and I don't think we'll get in trouble for this, the only change we made is my wife did not like the fact that the wording for heated was off-centered. She wanted it centered. So they did that for us.
That's awesome. That's awesome. It makes me think of, and here's our first tangent. And I think, Stephen, you've been there as well. In Las Vegas, there is a place called the Neon Boneyard, where they've taken some of the, like
Iconic
some of the most,
stuff.
yes, exactly right, and salvage them, and they're on display. So the original Aladdin's lamp from the Aladdin Casino, or the waving cowboy you see a lot in sort of vintage pictures of Las Vegas. And I always think, we should do something like that in the Adirondacks, because there's so many cool signs and stuff too. But that's a topic for another day.
We actually saved the pieces from the sign.
Oh, wow.
One is on display. A part of one is on display behind one of the cabins. We use as kind of a lighting feature at night for that cabin's little sitting area. We have an entire half still somehow held together in storage. And then a couple other pieces are at the Red Canoe Antique Shop in Saranac Lake, which is an amazing place to visit, just the location itself. But we have some of the glass. We've actually used some of the old glass when other pieces have broken. But neon is an incredibly interesting medium to work with, and that was not one of the skills I would have thought that in buying a motel I would learn how to repair neon signs. But when you're serviceman, the service call has to come, almost 200 miles one way. You learn quite quickly how to repair these things. So
that's amazing. Just give us an idea, like what we were talking a little bit before we got on. You had a whole entire different career prior to this. What inspired you and your wife to become, proprietors of a vintage motel in Tupper Lake?
I guess a couple of things. I had the opportunity in college to work for a home builder, and it had about 3 or 4 years experience in construction. So through the years, I've kind of kept my hands in that. We've redone a couple homes now. So we had that skill set. So we weren't afraid to take on the physical aspect of kind of bringing these cabins back. The bottom line is I never imagined myself to own a motel or run a motel. That's not really what we got involved in. It's the location.
Okay.
It's the park. I grew up all my life driving past that location, that property. And just like so many of our guests have said, you would drive by and look at those little houses, and particularly the one on the end, cabin one with the stone fireplace. And you imagine, what would it be like? What would it be like to stay there? What would it be like to live in that little cabin? And I've been going to the Adirondacks since I was 4 years old. My wife and I talked about that. And, the Adirondacks are a gift that the people of the state of New York gave themselves about 140 years ago.
Yep.
Definitely.
And that gift is renewed generationally. I was fortunate that I had parents that valued that. My mother immigrated from Quebec when she was about 8 years old to northern New York. My grandfather had a dairy farm on the Deer River, just on the blue line. My mother's first job out of nursing school was at Sunmount when it was still owned by the VA. And so they had children, and we were going to go to Fish Creek. That's what people did in the 60s and 70s. And so the best memories of my childhood are at Fish Creek, and then up on my grandparents' farm, a week in one place, a week in the other. So that's how I came to know Tupper Lake. And I was not looking to buy anything other than that property in that town.
Wow.
Oh.
To talk about focus, that's awesome. what I read, just sort of doing my research, that the Northwood Cabins weren't originally built on that location. Is that right?
That is correct. That is correct. They originally were built on what we call now is the old Wabeek Road. Back in the day, it was just a Wabeek Road, which is just north of us.
Right.
There's a road, and it runs from Tupper Lake, and it originally ran from Tupper Lake all the way over to Wabeek on route. What's that? That's 30 going up to Paul Smith.
Yes.
Another 3 or 30. And then there was the Wabeek hotel right there.
Mm.
The Olympics come in, and they abandoned Wabeek Road. It's now a hiking trail to Deer Pond, which is a great spot. And they put in Route 3. So they decided it was owned by a different family, the Badettes, who are still in Tupper Lake. Their grandchildren and great grandchildren. I've met them, but the Laportes bought it and decided to bring it down to Route 3, which was now the highway. And so they disassembled them and trucked them down to property that was given to them by their family, a 1 acre lot on the highway. And then they proceeded to just kind of cram them together. When we do work, we'll open up a wall and find out exterior siding on the wall. they would just, well, these two cabins would look good together, so we'll just toenail them together. It'll hold. It'll be fine. And it's worked for 80 years. And then in 1940, they purchased a house that came by railroad car. We have pictures of them. We have pictures of them working on it. We can look in the picture. We can look through the big front window, and we can see someone standing over a set of sawhorses working inside. At some point, they wanted to expand the house, so we have what we call our office, which would have been a bedroom, is actually a cabin that they then attached to the back of the house. It still has the round cedar floor joists underneath it, to this day.
Wow. And
then over time, they added. We get the sense that the east side of the property was the kind of the original, and then the 5 cabins, which was at one time 6 cabins, on the west side of the property were added over time.
And I don't want us to get on another tangent. When people like buy a property and then move it, I'm amazed that like they do that. Like what could be, and I know nothing about this, but it just seems to me like it would just be so much cheaper just to rebuild. Like the house my mother grew up in, people bought it and then they moved it up the road a mile. And I'm just like, why just buy another property or buy the land and build it? I don't know what the cost benefit analysis of that looks like, but it just seems like that's a lot of work for.
People in the North Country, I think of my grandfather and what he did, is very resilient and also very resourceful.
Okay.
If that building is a good building, why would I buy another one when I can just move it down the road and reuse it?
I guess so.
And if I want to have a bigger cabin, well, I'll just take half of one cabin and put it behind the other one. If you look at our cabins, the siding never matches. There's breaks in the siding, different styles of siding, and we know now, having been inside them, that's where they just nailed it together and just went on with their work.
That's so interesting. Aside from the actual physical property, have you discovered any quirky or surprising bits of history about the cabins? Did anybody famous sleep there? Has there been any legends that you've uncovered?
Any James Bond stories?
No, but I guess famous people just don't come to Tupper. I don't know, but we have what we do tell our guests is you're staying in a almost 100-year-old motor court in the mountains, about 1.5 miles from a mental health facility, and out behind our cabins we have an ambulance, a 1953 Buick ambulance that's slowly sinking into the forest floor. And we always talk. We want to get a skeleton, put it in the driver's seat. But the grandchildren and the great grandchildren and the great great grandchildren of the original owners have been very gracious and very generous. When they found out we bought it, within a couple days, the family was just stopping by and sharing pictures with us.
Oh, wow.
Their stories. They told us the history of the cabins used to have names after family members. They provided us with a picture of Ava Laporte, who is the original owner, her and her husband, Arthur. She's sitting in a chair by the fireplace in our main room. That picture now sits on the mantle just above where she would have sat. And we always say that whatever decision we make, whatever we do, we always check with her first and make sure
terrific.
that's what we should do.
I love that.
We found all these great signs that were up in the attic and out in the shed that the previous owner was not interested in. Like one was a sign that said, huge sign that said breakfast. And it was painted with glass. It was painted, it had paint that had glass embedded in it.
Huh.
So that when the headlights of the cars would hit it, it would glow at night.
Wow.
It would spark. We took that up and we cleaned it up and we hung it in our main room. Well, her grandchildren came in and recognized it right away.
Wow.
And they said she used to serve breakfast. She had a piano and she would lay all the breakfast food out on the piano, and they pointed to where it was. And they were just so thrilled that we had brought that tradition back, that we would serve a continental breakfast in the main house in the morning. So.
Oh, that's super. That's such a great story. I love,
Yeah.
We had the folks from the Scroon Lake department store on, it's a 100-plus-year-old general store in Scroon Lake, obviously, but they sort of had a similar experience too. They renovated, and the more they took down walls or dug into things, they found, in fact, when they bought the property, they didn't even know it, but the original stained glass window that said Scroon Lake department store was still intact.
Mm-hmm.
So it must have been so much fun to make those discoveries as you were going through the process of reviving your cabins as well. Let's also give our listeners who may not be familiar, Tupper Lake it's in the sort of, they call it the Tri-Lakes and High Peaks region of the Adirondacks. It's north. It's west of Lake Placid and Saranac Lake, but I spent some time there last summer just in some of my traveling around to visit different places. It's kind of having a little bit of a rebirth right now, or in the last couple of years. There's some great properties to say. The lake is beautiful. What's it like to be in Tupper Lake? Are you guys there year round?
We're not. We split about half and half
Okay.
right now. We're a seasonal business. We open at the end of June for the first big event of the season is the Tupper Tin Man
Yes.
race. It's a qualifying race for the Ironman, so a very popular race. And then we go through till Columbus Day, Canadian Thanksgiving.
Mm-hmm.
After that, our water lines are too shallow. While our sign says heated, it's marginal. I mean, we tell people, keep the heat on 24/7. We don't care. Make yourself comfortable. There's extra blankets put out. By mid-September, we're putting extra blankets out for the guests. It's a unique property, and with it, some unique solutions to some of the problems. But we closed down by the end of October. We spent some time going to visit our kids, traveling. We still have our home. It was funny when we got to Tupper Lake, people didn't really know us, and you're making introductions, and the topic of North Country winters come up. Well, as a kid, I spent many winters up in the North Country. I went to college up there, so I was very familiar. But I think we got a lot of credibility or credit when we said, well, when we leave here, we go back to Buffalo. So we love going up in the winter to have it to ourselves.
Right.
We tuck ourselves in, get a fire going. My wife always says how she lays at bed at night and listens to the plows going by, and she knows that they're keeping, that's just kind of a soothing sound to her that she knows she can get out if she has to, I guess. But Tupper Lake is really a unique place. It's a special place. If you're going to come to Tupper and you're going to stay at a property, you're going to eat at a restaurant, you're going to go to a shop, you're going to find that it's probably the owner that's cooking. It's probably their children that are waiting on you, or their family friends.
Yeah.
If there's renovations to be done on the property, a lot of them will close or go to short schedules in April. And that's when they do their deep cleaning and they do the renovations, because they're, if there's not a corporation, there's no, we kid about it on our Facebook page that, Northwood Cabins Incorporated sends their crews up. Well, we're the crew, it's
right.
And it's just a nice thing to know you're going to get that personal service and relationship with the businesses. When we got there, we didn't know anyone. I still had some family in the area, but we were unknown. And within days, we found out that people in Tupper really wanted us to succeed. Roost was amazing. They were out within a few days introducing themselves and telling us what they could do and offering services. I would say if I ever wrote a book, so you want to buy a business you have no business buying, the thing I would tell people is source. We try to source all our materials locally that we can. Tupper Lake Supply, Fortune's Hardware. I mean, these are family-run businesses that appreciate and recognize your patronage. Our attorney, our accountant, our insurance, all is in Tupper, and they answer the phone when you call.
Yeah,
I will share a story. When we were looking to buy, I was very fortunate that I was in a business that I had contact with a lot of attorneys. They were all criminal attorneys, so they weren't a lot of help on real estate acquisition, but they knew people. And this gentleman spent quite a bit of his time explaining to me the dangers of buying a business like this. And the one thing he left me with is said, make sure there's no sales tax obligation. Make sure there's no tax liens on that property, or you will have to take on all of those and the penalties. That was what he left me with. And I was like, oh, absolutely. We're there about a week. We're repairing that driveway I talked about. I'm the laborer on the crew. The guys from the Neon Sign are there tearing that apart. Spectrum, thank God, finally decides to show up and start putting our internet in, because we've been doing everything on our phones. And my wife calls. She's driving back home. She just got an email from Albany. Cease and desist. $10,000 a day fine. You cannot open this business. She's in tears. And my response was, I got my own problems, honey. You deal with it. Appreciate it. She calls our accountant, who was a wonderful man. And he said, where are you? She said, I'm about Old Forge. He said, I'll stay. Do not go to the motel. Come right to the office. We will fix this today.
Oh, wow.
So she drives there well after 5. He's waiting for her. He reviews it. He said, it's our fault. We checked one box wrong. He said, this will be resolved tomorrow. And it was. And that's the kind of support we've gotten from the community. And we're so appreciative of that. It's made this so much easier for us.
That is a very common thread that runs through a lot of these conversations that we have with folks, is the amazing support of the community, and there aren't really, there's not chains here, right? There's no Applebee's or Olive Garden, there, are maybe a Hampton Inn in Plattsburgh or Lake Placid.
Yeah.
But, almost everything is independently owned small businesses, and people really, it's a rising tide lifts all boats, right? So people want you to succeed because it's probably going to have some kind of positive impact on their business. But I just hear just amazing stories like the one you just told of just people, just being there for you in the community. And I think that's fantastic. And you've brought up Roost a couple of times. I just want to let our listeners know it's called the Regional Office for Sustainable Tourism. I think their website is roost.org, and I'll put it in the show notes. They're a great resource. I actually, as a content creator, they provide great, they have a media library of great photos, which I've taken advantage of, giving proper credit to them or whoever took the picture, but they really do an amazing job championing businesses in the North Country there. They're great. We should probably have them on the podcast, Steve.
Yeah,
I,
that's what I'm thinking about.
we cannot speak highly enough of them. They just were really, and I will mention them by names, but they had a representative come out within days and sat down with us and said, "This is how it works. Lake Placid is not your competition. Lake George is not your competition. They're your collaborators, and you're going to work with them through us. And it's going to be," they said, "Myrtle Beach is your competition. Savannah is your competition," and that is proven to be true. We have the Ironman on Lake Placid. Well, we fill cabins that weekend because of the Ironman. At the time, Russ McKenna was the director. And Roos is a very large organization. He made time to come out and sit with us within our first couple of weeks of being there. I mean, we're only 9 little cabins, you think, right? And they said they just wanted us to succeed. And they were so willing to help that way. And we were very appreciative of that.
That's amazing. That's so great. Yeah, Tupper Lake is a great jumping off point. There's plenty of things to do there. You guys are right down the road from the Wild Center, which is a nationally recognized, almost like Museum of Natural History in the Adirondacks. They've got great things going on there. There's obviously everything connected to the lake and great hiking, but Paul Smith's is close by. Saranac Lake is close by. So, it's a great location to, experience lots of different parts of the Adirondacks as well. So, and I just saw that Big Tupper, the former ski resort, has been bought by new owners. And so it'll be interesting to see what they do with that property. So, I can't say enough great stuff about Tupper Lake.
And the lake itself.
Yeah, definitely. And one of my favorite restaurants, Woodshed on Park, is
yes. They are doing just amazing things. It's just there's an example of a family-owned, business just committed to the community and wanting to make the best possible experience for their guests. Yeah,
and he was the chef owner. I think grew up in Tupper Lake, but he worked for Tom Colicchio. I mean, the host of what's that, Top Chef, and the owner of some of New York's most iconic restaurants. So many stories of people coming back to the Adirondacks from, all over the country, I just think is really inspiring as well. Are there any other local spots we haven't mentioned that you want to give a shout out to?
Well, if you stay at the Northwood Cabins, we send all of our laundry out to one of the most unique businesses you'll ever encounter.
Yes.
So your sheets, I think they do a good job. Do not smell like donuts, but they should, because it's the only laundry service, donut shop, and gift shop you'll ever find in one location. And it is an absolute mecca for people that come to Tupper Lake, and it should be. It's we try to, we have our share of donuts, but you gotta ration them, or you'll pay the price. They are delicious. It's the frosting she puts on it that's amazing.
Yeah, and they're right in the heart of the town too. I whenever I'm in Tupper Lake, even if I'm not hungry, I stop there and get a couple of donuts. I was there last summer with my frequent travel partner, my bestie Pam. She refused to go in. She's like, I am not eating a donut that was made in a laundromat. And I'm like, you do not know what you're missing, lady. Okay, fine. More donuts for me then. That's great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's a great thing. So, Brian, and what's next for Northwood Cabins? Any new projects that you're thinking about?
There's always a project. Sometimes one that you have in mind, and sometimes ones that just present themselves. So you have to take it as it comes sometimes. But for us, our journey with Northwood Cabins is coming to an end. We purchased this. It'll be 9 years ago. 9 years ago, June 30th. I was fortunate enough that I was able to retire at a fairly young age, and my wife was as well. But we made a commitment to ourselves and to the business that we were going to do this for 10 years. We felt that based upon our age, that we could give it our all for that period of time. And during that time, as I mentioned before, we had a plan. We were going to get all these cabins in this house up to snuff. But then it was time to back away and hopefully have a property that someone else would want to come and take to the next level, because there's always things that can be done. It's never ending. Sadly, the people that we purchased it from, the couple that we purchased it from, both passed away within a year of selling to us.
Oh, wow.
And so that was something that we kind of had in the back of our mind. So we said 10 years. But it takes time to sell property. So
Sure.
We've listed it with a great local realtor who knows the North Country. He's been selling camps and businesses up there forever, and we trust him. And we're going to follow his lead. We posted on our Facebook page when it was actually for sale quietly for quite some time. But we wanted to take last season to tell our returning guests. We've been so fortunate to have this group that's expanding, that have become more like family than guests. I know that's kind of cliche, but it's absolutely true. We just have we see their name in the book, and we know this is going to be a good week because they're going to be here.
Oh,
And we wanted to sit down and we wanted to tell them and tell them that as long as we were here, it was still going to be the Northwood Cabins that they knew. And after last season, we said, all right, go ahead, put the sign up. And now it's official. And we told people that, they made it on Facebook and our webpage. It was for sale, and that we would continue to run it till we weren't. And that's kind of where we're at now. Selfishly, the other reason, I know selfish or not, but we love Tupper. We're not leaving. We're going to stay. Other part of our plan was that we wanted to have another place, and we thought that was going to be the time. Well, we fell into we bought a place, an older camp on a piece of quiet water not too far from Tupper, and we want to be there now too. So we're staying in Tupper, but the motel is for someone else to take to the next step now.
Yep. It is a really nice thought. And, sometimes I think when, I know when we hear a local business is up for sale, especially one that we're super fond of, our immediate knee-jerk reaction is, oh no. But, I think your story is not uncommon. People, you can't run a motel for your whole life. You know what I mean? You do different things. And just because you're selling doesn't mean there's anything wrong with the business. It's just time for you to do something different. And the fact that you're sticking with it till you sell it is amazing. Any advice you would have for, I remember when Bob Newhart's show Newhart came out in the 80s, and it, everyone wanted to move to Vermont and open an inn, and it's not that glamorous. So any advice for would be, what would you call yourself, a motelier or? We
had a guest once say, "Oh, it's like a bed and breakfast." And my wife said, "It's more like cabins and coffee. We don't make a full breakfast." So both my wife and I guess, complement each other and bring a different skill set. I think if you're any business, especially in the North Country, you have to be pretty self-sufficient. There's the saying, no one's coming, it's just us.
Yeah.
You better be able to fix a leaking toilet or a busted water line. I joked the first couple of years I made more money as a roofer than a motelier because I re-roofed all the cabins in the house.
Wow.
and my sons came up and helped, and it was a good experience. But that was one of those repairs. I said we had planned to do it. I just didn't plan to do it the second week. We had one of our first guests check into cabin one, and she was very, very pleasant. And her son had just done the race up Whiteface. and was exhausted.
Wow.
And she said, he's just having trouble sleeping because it rained last night and it's dripping on his forehead.
Oh.
So that next day we ordered shingles, and I was stripping the roof and putting new shingles on. So be independent, be flexible, but also be creative. I'm a licensed New York State guide. We thought that was an important thing to have, not because I lead trips anymore, but that we help people plan their stay. We will sit down at breakfast and we'll get out the maps and we'll plan out a route, whether it's canoeing, hiking, or you want to go on an antique trail. We can put that together and send you to some amazing little shops. Seven Gables is an old gas station in Enchanting, which is just an interesting location. Red Canoe, I mentioned, is in an old restaurant, but the murals on the wall, they're almost, the stop itself is what's important, not what they're selling. And there's just these kind of unique little places that we try to send people to and try to kind of craft that for each individual guest. And so we always say, we will not recommend a hike, a paddle, or a restaurant that we haven't tried ourselves. So we try to be out there doing all three of those things. We mentioned the woodshed. You know, they opened up. We were actually there their first official day because we wanted to make sure that it was okay. You know, we want to be able to give our guests as much information as we can to make their stay enjoyable.
That's terrific. That is actually, that's sort of the same philosophy behind, you know, what we do with this podcast and with 80ktaste.com. It's sort of like your personal insider guide to the best places to visit in the Adirondacks. And, you know, when I first started this and Steve and I were talking about it, you know, part of it was like just getting frustrated with people asking me all the time, "Oh, you have a place in the Adirondacks. Where should I go? What should I do?" I'm like, "It's 6 million acres large. It's the size of New Jersey. Like, do you want to go to the beach? Do you want to go to hunt country? Do you want to be close to the city?" You know, so you kind of have to, and there are amazing resources. You know, each different separate region has their own website, but there wasn't sort of one place that I felt sort of explained the park and the different areas in the park and the different things to do there. And, you know, anyways, this isn't about me. It's supposed to be about you, but
but you're right.
Yeah. I love that. Go ahead.
Well, if you look at the park, and you spend every little town has its own personality and its own kind of niche. I think a place like Blue Mountain Lake.
Yeah.
Chef Daryl opened up his diner there recently. But other than that, Blue Mountain Lake doesn't have any restaurants because their history has always been the all-inclusive resorts, Potters and Hemlock Hall. And so, so is someone driving through, I'm not going to send someone down to Blue Mountain Lake who wants to eat, you know, because it's not going to go well for them. I will say there's a tasting room down there at the old Potters Resort. And Hex and Hops is going in there next year. Yep. So, I mean, I have Hex and Hops right down in Bloomingdale, but now kind of the Central Adirondacks is going to enjoy their beer, and they're going to be fortunate for that. But every one of these towns is a different, you know, it's a different vibe. You know, Long Lake is nothing like Tupper Lake. Right. You know, within the Tri-Lakes, you know, as a visitor, you say, the Tri-Lakes, Lake Placid, Saranac Lake, and Tupper Lake are completely different towns with completely different personalities. And that's what makes it interesting.
I couldn't agree more. And I think also just the physical aspect of different towns like Essex and Westport and the Champlain Valley region is very different from the High Peaks region, which is different from Old Forge and the Western Adirondacks. So there really is, again, there's a wide variety of things to do here. It's a big place, and I honestly believe we have something for everyone. So that's terrific. And speaking of that, Brian, every guest, and you've given us so many great places you've mentioned already, but we always ask our guests, what's their favorite hidden gem in the Adirondacks, so when friends or family come from Buffalo, what is the place where you say, oh, we've got to go do this, or you must see that. And it can be anything. It can be a paddle, a hike, an ice cream stand. It's totally up to you, but you cannot say Northwood Cabins. But what would be your hidden gem, your favorite spot?
I prepared for this. I was listening to all your other podcasts, which were very, very informative and enjoyable. So I was like, oh man, I got to get an answer. So I polled my family, and none of them agreed. They all had different places. And a lot of them were like, but don't tell anyone about that. We don't want to.
Don't want to ruin it.
We're in the hospitality business, guys. We got to kind of, share these things. And then I thought some kind of places that connect with me emotionally or because of my family. But in the end, if it's not for Tupper, if I was not in Tupper, I would be in Newcomb, New York. I think Newcomb, New York is the quintessential Adirondack town, but it also has everything. You have the Vic is down there. You have Goodnow Mountain if you want to climb a fire tower. You have a state park if you want to camp. You have the Hudson River. You have the history of Tahoe and Upper Works.
Yep.
But the gem of Newcomb is Camp Santanoni.
Oh, yeah.
I guess one of the reasons that this answer was easy was I just looked at our pictures and my notes. We go to Santanoni at least once a year. If it's just a walk to the farm or if it's to hike into the camp, it is a yearly pilgrimage for us. You can bike in if you want. You can hike in. The wagon ride is amazing. We did that one time just because we felt we needed to experience that, to share that with our guests. But there is nothing better than to hike into that camp and sit on that front porch where millionaires used to sit and enjoy your lunch overlooking Newcomb Lake. That is just one of our most, and the work they've done over the last 15 to 20, well, now it's 20 years, is awesome. They've restored the entire place.
It is.
That's incredible, an incredible spot. It hasn't been a place that anybody's mentioned before, but it does come up. In fact, we were just talking about it when we were talking about books set in the Adirondacks. Santanoni is considered one of the Adirondack Great Camps. And as you said, it was, I think, abandoned in the 70s. There was the family that owned it had a tragedy. The young son walked off into the woods and never came back. And so they abandoned the property and now I hope I hope I'm not spreading false stories, but people could go in there and just take stuff. So people went in and took the light fixtures and took things from it and just sort of, like the Romans did to the Colosseum, stripped off the marble and salvaged. And so when they decided that it would be restored. And I think it's the Adirondack Architectural Heritage Group that has a role in that. People actually started bringing stuff back. And, as you said, Brian, they've done an incredible job restoring it. And I always think like that hike in or ride in, it's 4 miles one way. Sort of like, you almost have to earn it, in a way to get the pleasure of seeing it and being there. But that's a great mention. Thank you for sharing that. I love that.
Yeah, it's sad. The barn burned a number of years ago. It was one of the most beautiful barns I've ever seen. But just if you get a chance to go back now, in the last few years, a family member of the Prime family, he makes dioramas. He has created dioramas of the farm complex and the camp complex that are on display in the building to give you a sense. I mean, they're absolutely beautiful. He has done an amazing job of creating these models of the camp and the farm that are worth the hike in just to see those.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can I another little shout out to Newcomb is it also has the most amazing view of the high peaks anywhere. in the Adirondacks.
Yes. Yeah. With that that cutout that you stand in front of.
Yeah.
So you could appear knowledgeable, right? Oh, there's that.
Yep.
That's Marcy.
Exactly.
I've climbed them all, and I sit on the road, and people say, "Which one's that?" I said, "I have no idea. I know Marcy. That's about it. I know the sewers because we can see this. We can see the sewers from our front yard. But other than that, from that angle, it kind of all blended to one to me.
Are you a 46er?
I am.
Good for you.
Congratulations.
Yeah, that was how we kind of stumbled on the motel. We were coming back from doing a couple climbs, and my son saw the sign and said, "Oh, wouldn't that be great if you and Mom bought that?" And we spent the ride home talking about this great motel we were going to have and what we were going to do. And I came home and I said that mentioned it to my wife. She's like, "Sure, we'll go look at it." And they weren't open, so we had to stay somewhere else. So we stayed at the Foss Motel, which is right on the other side of town. They've redone that. Absolutely beautiful. If you can't stay with Northwood Cabins, stay there. And we had the most absolutely perfect fall Adirondack day you could have.
Mm.
We went out to look at the property, loved it. Came back. It was the we call it Oktoberfest in Tupper Lake. It was our Oktoberfest.
Yep.
And back then it was on the mountain. The leaves were at peak. Chair ride lift rides up to the top of the mountain. Helicopter rides, a band. Big Tupper Brewery was still open. They were serving beer. And at the end of the day, we went back, had dinner at P2's, which is a great little Irish pub in Tupper.
Yeah.
And then stopped at Raquette River Brewing when all it was the garage.
Wow.
And that was their brewery, their tasting room, their retail. And drove home and said, "Yeah, we want to do this. We want to be there." And it took a while to do it, but it finally came true for us.
That's awesome. What a great story. You've mentioned so many great places just in Tupper Lake. I love Raquette River Brewing, and P2's is an awesome, real Irish bar that is great year round. And a lot of these places are open year round too. Raquette River Brewing is, P2's is. So it's always a good time to be in Tupper Lake.
Always.
Well, Brian, this has been so much fun. I loved hearing about your journey. Give the URL for your website again, please.
Northwood Cabins, 80, and I have to always stress the cabins is plural, not the Northwoods. So it's northwoodcabins80k.com.
Awesome. And listener, we'll have this in the show notes and links to all the different places we've talked about. And, it's just a few more weeks until Memorial Day and sort of summer kicks off. So we hope you have a wonderful season and you find the right buyer for your property.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Even if I have a bad season, I still get to spend a summer in the Adirondacks.
There you go. That's the way to think about it.
It really is. It's a special place, and it gets in your blood.
Awesome.
I bet. Yeah.
All right. Well, you have a great day, and thanks for stopping by. And next time I'm in Tupper Lake, I will make sure I drop in and say hello in person.
Thank you. It's been enjoyable. We hope to see you.
Great. Take care.
Yep. Thank you. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
That was so much fun. Do you want to buy a motel now?
Sure.
Well, you've got all, he said you have to kind of be able to do a lot of things, and you definitely have the construction, skills to be your own handyman too. That something to think about.
I mean, it'd be, I'm sure it's extremely interesting, and it's a great place to have that kind of business. So I'd be up for it.
All right.
For 10 years.
For 10 years, exactly. Especially if you only have to work 4 months a year. That's what's really great.
If you can make that work, then that's even better.
That is even better. Oh, well, it finally stopped raining. I'm not going to be able
to become a guide, though, I don't think.
Yeah. I could be a guide to other things, but not necessarily that. It's beautiful up here today. It finally stopped raining. Oh
Yeah.
my God. I thought I was going to have to build an ark. It just rained and rained and rained so much last week. We took Mom out for dinner last night at the Algonquin in Bolton Landing.
yeah.
And the water, I've never seen the water that high in the lake. It was, they have those docks where people can come in by boat. They were not quite submerged, but it was, you couldn't see underneath the dock. It was that high, but it was beautiful. It was chilly, so we sat inside, but the hostess gave us a great table right next to the window, and we got to see the moonrise. And, it's I guess the full moon is today, but it was really,
It was close enough.
Yeah, it was really spectacular. Anyway, what else is going on? Memorial Day weekend is coming up. We are compiling recommendations for our picks or the best things to do over Memorial Day weekend. So by the time I think this podcast airs, you should be able to see that on 80ktaste.com. And there's a lot of stuff going on. Traditional Memorial Day parades and activities, but other great stuff. The big community center is having its grand opening in Newcomb, speaking of Newcomb. And there's the Great Adirondack Garage Sale, which is 200 miles of garage sales. I think it starts in Indian Lake and goes all the way to Old Forge and up to Cranberry Lake. So if you like to bargain hunt and treasure hunt, that's a great thing to do. And I think it's all 3 weeks. And the Adirondack Experience is opening on that weekend as well. So it's a great way to kick off the summer.
It's the start of the summer.
That's right. And with that, I think that does it for us today. Listener, thank you again for tuning in to another episode of 80K Talks. If you have questions, comments, feedback, please don't be shy and share. Email us at info@80ktaste.com. We love to hear from our listeners. Maybe we should share some of our emails, have a little listener mailbag, if you will. We get some really interesting questions. A lot about Sasquatch. I got to be honest with you.
It's all
about Sasquatch. Exactly. Anyway, listener, if you enjoyed today's episode, please rate and review us on your favorite podcast platform. It helps others discover Adirondack podcast content. And for more exclusive insights, visit 80ktaste.com. And when you're there, be sure to sign up for our weekly newsletter so you never miss an update. And it's just one email once a week. It's not spam. And we have current events, news, insights in that newsletter. So take a look. So until next time, keep exploring and enjoying the fabulous Adirondacks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.